Welcome. This is Orienteering USA's April O Forum. Its topic is starting a new club. We have a couple of panelists who will talk about different issues. We'll have questions on the challenges and solutions they have on starting a new orienteering club in the US. This meeting or forum is being recorded. So if you would not like to appear in the recording, just make sure to keep your camera off or your microphone muted, or you can leave the meeting and watch the recording later. This forum will end up on the O Forum playlist in the Orienteering USA YouTube channel. All right. Tonight's panelists, we have Boris Konofsky of GrizO Orienteering in Missoula, Montana, Radu Greavu of Austin Orienteering Club in Texas, and Bruce Moore, who has actually helped found two clubs in the fairly recent past, most recently NashO. So what we'll do is have each panelist give a quick introduction of their clubs. We got some slides for each of them, and then we'll go into a sort of a panel format where we ask each one a series of questions, and we'll take questions. We might take some as we go if they're just clarification things. Mostly though, we'll go through panel questions, and then at the end we'll have some time. We'll take more in-depth questions. So, Boris, take it away.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Christina, for introducing us. My name is Boris Konofsky. I've been orienteering for about 35 years. I started as a kid in Russia through my dad, and then continued after moving to the States. I've run for several clubs in the States and lived in Sweden and ran for a club there for a while. I moved to Missoula with my wife, Allison, during the pandemic. She is from here. There was no orienteering of any kind in Montana at that time, though we later unearthed a map from 1984 that is now a club treasure. It was sort of a non-starter for me to live in a place that didn't have orienteering. So Allison challenged me to start a club. So we did, starting with a series of free events and then kind of going to a more ongoing schedule. And so we've been functioning for about 5 years now. We've organized 77 events now, including 5 days of NREs. One more coming up this fall. Come on out to Missoula in September. The other sort of guiding principle that we had right off the start is focusing on youth and focusing on training. And so we pretty quickly launched after-school youth programs that run twice a year, both in the spring and the fall. And then we also have kind of concurrently with the more advanced youth program, we run year-round weekly training. We're now up to about 15 usable maps and working on adding a few more, but that's obviously a work in progress. That's my intro. I can answer questions later or talk more.
Hi there, my name is Radu Greavu. I'm the co-founder of the Austin Orienteering Club. We founded the club in 2009, about 16 years ago. And when I was a lot younger, me and my friend here in Texas, actually he moved from Romania to Texas, and we've been orienteering together since we were little kids. I was 12 years old. And when he came to visit, he said, can we attend any orienteering events? And there were none in the area. I didn't even know that orienteering existed in Texas. So we found an event in Houston that we attended, and that led us to found our own club, the Austin Orienteering Club, since 2009. Currently, the other Radu, it's no longer here in the States, but he did provide a good foundation for this club from the beginning. And currently we have about 11 maps that we developed for the past 15, 16 years that we're using regularly. Here in Texas, the weather is a little challenging for us, so our events here usually start early fall until about early springs. And we try to have about 7 events a year currently. And why we started a new club really was the passion for the orienteering and outdoors, and of course, no active orienteering clubs in Texas or close to Austin. no events locally to us. We had to travel other places for events, and we wanted to make the sport more known. That's still a challenge today. There's a lot of people that I run into and that do not know what orienteering is. Yeah, that's all about me for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now it's time for Bruce. Bruce, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. How's
No
that?
problem. I can hear you now.
Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Bruce Moore. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and I've been orienteering since the late 70s, a long time ago. And I came up through the old SIU, Southern Illinois University system back then. And so I had a club. I started orienteering there. After college, I moved to San Diego, become active in that club. And then I moved to St. Louis, where I got a job, became active in that club. And then I moved, got married, moved to Louisville, Kentucky, where there was no club. And so I had to do something about it. So I started a club in 1986. Fortunately, USOF told me that there was a guy here that made a map, and that helped a lot. His name was Dave Pruden. Some of you might know him, but he had a map, and he was basically training, waiting for somebody to start a club, and I just came around at the right time. So Orienteering Louisville was founded back then, and it was a long time before I decided to start another club, and that would be Nashville Orienteering Club in 2022, I guess, or 21 maybe. A lot of people would come up to Louisville meets from Nashville. I got a lot of emails saying, why isn't there a club in Nashville? So I think basically I do a lot of mapping, and there was nothing else to map in Louisville, so I decided to start driving down to Nashville and start making maps. And I met another guy from Nashville who's part-time resident there, Jason Rakowski, and he kind of helped get started. He did all the paperwork, became the accountant, and I just kept on making maps until Jason lent the club some money to buy some sport ident stuff. And then we held our first meet. And after that, we started getting some people trickling in. It's a big city. Nashville is a big city, a lot of parks. And we grew pretty fast, and we still are growing. So that we have 8 maps now. 8 maps in just, I guess, 3 years, 2 or 3 years, which is a lot. So we're doing pretty good. So that's about the start of that.
Awesome. Okay, thanks for those introductions. I'm going to move back to just the list of names so everyone knows who we're talking to. Great. So I know everyone's interested in some nitty gritty questions about how you all have done things, but I'm actually going to start with a short answer one, which is I would like each of you to let me know whether you think if you dropped off the face of the earth, whether your club that you're talking about here would be able to continue to function at this point. We can just go down, Boris, Radu, Bruce.
Sure. I think for the first time since we've started, the answer is probably yes. But I suspect that it would ramp down quite a bit to like kind of the bare bones of maybe regular events and regular local events and like a youth program. But I think it would survive. I'm sort of optimistic about that.
And I should say that I think that does that answer change if you and Allie disappear?
I think this assumes that we both disappear.
Both disappear. Okay, so that's the answer. Okay, great.
Yeah, for Austin Orienteering Club, that's a tough one. I've been wearing multiple hats from the starting of the club, from president to treasurer to webmaster, everything that kind of has to do with the Austin Orienteering Club. I've been doing that role, and I'm not sure how the club will do if I disappear from the face of the earth, to be honest with you. I think initially there will be some events there, but we're struggling with volunteers, and they will be tough to continue the club.
Bruce, how about you?
Okay, the answer, of course, to both clubs, Orienteering and Louisville, of course, been around a long time. NashO Orienteering, yes, for sure. I served as president because we had to have a president to form a club, and that's the only reason I did that. My goal was to try to hand it off to somebody or some group of people as soon as possible. So all the work we were doing was trying to get somebody to run the club. Jason was not a resident of Nashville either. So we had two people that lived out of town trying to start a club in another city. And there's no way that I was going to be that involved where they completely depended on me. And right now, yeah, there's a president who's great. There's about 5 members who have experience in other clubs. Definitely can run by themselves. They don't need me at all.
Okay, those are pretty good answers. I think that's actually often something that happens with clubs in the U.S. is there's one person holding it all together, and it sounds like there's movement in all of these to spread the wealth, as it were, the load. Awesome. All right. Going back to the beginning, I'd like to hear about how you made your first maps. I know you're not all mappers, right? So how did it come about? How did you actually get your first maps? Were they orienteering quality, ISO and quality? Did you get a mapper? Did you have LiDAR data? All that. We can go the same order this time. We'll switch it up. Of course.
Sure. I am explicitly not a mapper. I have tried to avoid it, though I think it's impossible when starting a club. But I was fortunate in that I had a good network of friends in Orienteering USA who were bored during the pandemic and also excited to see a new club start up because I think we needed some positive news in the Orienteering community. So I was fortunate to have a few friends remotely make auto-generated maps for me to kind of get us started. So that was kind of the first 2 maps that we made, and we held 2 events on each to see if there was feasibility for a club. And they were remote, and then I did rudimentary field checking to add trails, rootstocks, rocks, things like that, things you can put controls on. They are still not super high quality maps. We've gotten much better maps since then, but that was a starting point.
And just to be clear for everyone, when you say auto-generated maps, you mean that you had LiDAR data in some areas, and so people were able to use tools like Cartoplotten or OCAD to make some kind of like an orienteering-based map, basically.
Yeah, it was an interesting challenge in Missoula at that point in particular because LiDAR was not available everywhere in the area. So we really picked out 2 places where we could have some LiDAR data, and it was done using Cartoplotten to make automatic map that showed really contours and vegetation, and everything else we kind of drew in as we went. Now, as of like 2 months ago, there's finally full LiDAR data for Missoula County.
So your initial venues were selected partially based on where there's data.
Definitely, it was where there's data, but also proximity to town because you need people.
Right, close places. Yeah, great. Mm-hmm. Okay, Radu, how about Austin?
Yeah, for us was tough. We knew we wanted a map, but we didn't know where to even start. And we had no clue. None of us, me and the other person that founded the club, had experience with mapping. We knew how to orienteer, but we didn't know how to do mapping. So also, we didn't know who to reach out to. And the people that helped the most in that area were Orienteering USA. At the time was USOF, right? What got rebranded. And also the North Texas Orienteering Association. They assisted us. They had a person local to them, Tatiana Zvitsun, if maybe some of you ran into her before. And she's the one that completed our first map. We worked with her. I remember having difficulty obtaining LiDAR data, but I think she was able to get it somehow. But it was hard at that time. It was 15 years ago when that happened. And also, we had to hire her to make that map. It, was a cost involved. It was just the 2 of us, right? Trying to start a club up and I remember the map itself at that time cost like 3,500, something like that. We didn't have that much money. We were young. We just wanted to run, right? That's all we wanted to do. And then it's when we reached out to Orienteering USA, and we obtained a grant in order to be able to pay for that map. So that's kind of how we built that first map. And the venue that we picked was State Park, McKinney Falls State Park here in Austin. And we picked that one because it had a lot of traffic. A lot of people visit that park daily. Also, it was central to Austin. And we thought it would be easier to work with them to obtain permission to use the park for a map and for an event, considering that they worked with NTOA and Houston Club for other maps in state parks. So that was our strategy, and that's kind of how we developed our first map.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, with the maps, I'm an experienced mapper, so I don't think I would have been able to start the club without that skill. I made about 40 maps since, well, I don't know, a long time ago. And of course, technology has changed. Fortunately, I've got a co-mapper, and that's Matthew Robbins, who supplied me with some excellent LiDAR for the maps in Nashville, and also he does that for Louisville too. But now I've made, I guess, 6 maps in Nashville in a fairly short time. I'm getting faster. Most of these parks are pretty small, but a couple of them are pretty large at the same time, and I'm still working on the first one I started. But I started working on 3 maps at the same time. One was Centennial Park, which is a nice big open historical park in the center of the city across from Vanderbilt. And I thought that would be really easy, but it wasn't so easy because there was 1,900 trees, and I think Vanderbilt has them all cataloged. So that's why I know how many trees there are. A lot of trees, and just a big place. Cedar Hill was a little harder than I thought. Cedars 11 was a lot harder than I thought. But right now the club has 8 maps, and fortunately I'm getting faster and cranking them out a lot faster. So we're doing really good with the maps, and now we're just after core members.
Okay, great. So I heard, let's see, Radu, you mentioned a map grant from Orienteering USA, which I don't know if those exist anymore, but someone correct me if I'm wrong. There is definitely, for anyone watching this, there's OUSA does have a passion project fund. And one of the things you can apply for is making a map that you couldn't otherwise do if your club is new and doesn't have any money, for instance. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. Specifically, it sounds like Bruce can make his own maps for any of you, I guess, but specifically for Radu and Boris. What is your advice if someone's starting a club and they don't have a Tatiana up the road or friends who are bored and want to make maps for them? What should you do if you want to make a new map for a new club? Either of you can jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can start. Now, I guess there's so many people out there to help. And I mentioned Tatiana, right? And she was here close to Dallas because back then we did not know who to reach out to, right? Now the internet is wide, and you can find a lot of resources, mappers out there, or other clubs to reach out to. And I think every single club will help. And I just wanted to point out something because I think I saw his name pop up. He's present here, Gord Hunter from Florida. Gord, about a year ago or so, he taught me through emails how to make a map. I learned a lot from him just by sending me some guidance on how to get started. I'm not by any means a professional on mapping, but the information that he gave me in a few emails was enough for me to create a map, right? And then with other individuals in our club that have an idea about orienteering, we were able to field check and do all that legwork and still be able to correct and learn as we go. So I would say now the resources are there. As long as you have software and there's free software, you don't have to pay. I remember the free software for making maps was not there initially. We had to have OCAD, and that was pricey, costly. We couldn't afford to do that. But now there's so many other ways to make the maps, and if you have the software and the will to do it, I think you can find the resources and the trainings and documentation on how to make one.
Yeah, and just to put in there, when you talk about free software now, I assume you mean like Open Orienteering Mapper,
Right?
Which is some people's preferred drafting tool, actually. So it's totally capable. So for anyone who wants to get into making maps, that's a great resource, and there are lots of tutorials and videos online for how to get started with it. Boris, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I think what Rado is saying is right, in the sense that there are a ton of resources out there, and there are people, including those on this call, who are willing to help. And I do think it doesn't have to be like an all-in-one process. Like, if you can learn how to make a base map first, you can start with that, and then you can sort of start figuring out field checking as you go. So I think it is a daunting process, but I think it doesn't have to be sort of this, I start with a blank sheet of paper and I have no idea what I'm doing. The other thing that I've seen, and I really try to participate, but I know that Jeff Toich from Ottawa has a really good, or at least well-received, series of classes and workshops that he teaches on both the base map generation and field checking processes. And so I am hoping to send some of my club mates to that, so that we get local.
Yeah, and that's Navigation Sports is Jeff's company. And that is actually another thing that you can apply for a passion. You always say passion grant for, if you want this to have people in your club attend some of his courses. That's the kind of thing you could apply and be like, I want to train mappers in my club. You don't have to be a new club. It could be, just a young club or a small one, and go to his one of his classes. And he does a lot of classes on drafting and even field work. I had another related question. Maybe not. Before does anyone? Well, if you do have a question, if you're in the audience and you have a question for one of the panelists, just write it in the chat so we can just see them and we can see whether they fit into what we're talking about. Moving away from maps a little bit, I am interested in how you have found new people, especially volunteers, because you're all sort of, you all said, yeah, I would probably be able to continue. How did you do it? How did you go from one or two people? Well, it sounds like all of you had, 2 people starting it up, to now you have other people doing enough that if you disappeared, it would live on. We can start, actually, we'll go backwards this time. We can start with Bruce.
Oh, so how do we get members? I think, no doubt about it, the best way for us, I didn't live in Nashville, so I didn't know anybody. Jason didn't live in Nashville, so we didn't know anybody. So the answer there was just to make a map and start holding meets. And it's like, you build it, they will come. And maybe Nashville's different because it is a fairly large city. But sure enough, we started having meets, and we started getting people come to our meets and want to be involved, especially people who had been members of other clubs. One member we have, core member we have, was a member of Rocky Mountain. Another one was a member of Possum Trot. Another a member of course, we have Sueki sisters. That's Grace and Ava, who are members of DVOA. And then we have Paul Gates, who's the president, was an orienteering coach at West Point, and he is good. So all these people just started trickling in, and they're still trickling in. Most of the people that are from other clubs said, well, I've been here 10 years and wanted a club so bad, and thank you for starting it. Now we can start orienteering again. To, people that just moved here like a year ago, and we're just thankful that there was a club there. So that's Nashville. That's a big city. May not get the results like that elsewhere, but I'd say the best thing to do regardless is to start holding meets.
Radu.
Yeah. So volunteering and volunteers is still kind of a problem for us here. And the reason why is we have a lot of people that come to our events, but not that many volunteers. Um, to to have that first event, the two of us was sufficient, right? And the day of, we were fortunate enough to have the other clubs in Texas help us with that first event. But right now, we kind of depend, and how it's been for the past 15 years. People come and go through Austin. They maybe work related, or maybe they move here, they stay here a little bit, they move somewhere else. And some of those people happen to be part, or were part previously, of a different club in the States, or they had familiarity with orienteering. And those were the people that kind of reached out and said, "Hey, if you need help, I'm willing to help. I've done this before. Let me know if you need any help." And usually that's who we mostly depend on for volunteers work. And I remember the first few meets, and even now, there's just few of us. And guess what? We bring our families to help. And some of our family members do not do orienteering at all, like zero, right? But they have a duty to, initially they had to check punch cards and stuff. And now that part got easier. But we kind of family members, that's kind of how we build our volunteers. Few families that will help.
I think in Missoula, the experience is somewhat different than both in Nashville and Austin. We didn't really have any people who had orienteered before. Of the folks who have been showing up to our events, people don't just like move to Missoula for jobs. And so it's been very much a from the ground up, try to get folks to take baby steps. Like everyone can collect controls. So that was like a good first step. Hey, if you want to help out, can you sign up to collect controls? And then the next thing was, can you help with registration? And then can you help with the start or things like that? And so that had some results and got some people who were interested in being involved. But honestly, I think the thing that catalyzed the club the most in terms of volunteer power is saying that we're going to organize a national event. And we're going to have 200 people come here, and we better have our stuff together so that we, look like we're a serious club and not a Mickey Mouse operation. And people got really behind that. I was definitely afraid that it would sort of scare people off, but it really had the opposite effect. Having this like big common project for people to like gather around was, I think, quite a bit inspiring. And I'd say we had a core group of maybe 20 to 30 volunteers involved in our first set of NREs. Some of them were also non-orienteering family members. My wife has a very large family in Missoula. That helps a lot. So I definitely hear Radu on what you're saying. But one of the things that was cool is we, right after the first set of NREs that we held, we had like a volunteer appreciation barbecue at our house. And I kind of started, we said, hey, can you guys go around and like talk about your impressions and see what you're thinking? And one of the guys who stood up first, who'd never orienteered before, said, when are we doing this again? And that was awesome. And so we're like, okay, let's do it again in 2 years. And we had the same thing where some more new people showed up. And obviously people leave, so you can't like, you always have to be looking for new volunteers. And so it is, I'm not saying by any means that the problem is solved, but I do think that don't be afraid to take on a big event that requires help, because we almost get more turnout for these big events in terms of volunteers than for the little ones, because people know that Ali and I can run a small event on our own if need be. Whereas with a big event, people are more incentivized to volunteer.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. I'm not one of the panelists. I didn't start a new club, but I have been working on trying to, grow the Tucson club. And I think that what Boris just said now with doing something big and getting people involved, totally agree. I think that that's to get people to feel like they're in a club, that you do something hard together, right? That's how you like form friendships and bonds with people is you work on something together. And so I definitely see that. I don't think it applies to, that's not just new clubs, right? It's for any club, like you be ambitious and do something. So in our case, like a Southwest Spring Week every year. Great. There was something Radu said that reminded me to ask about e-punch equipment, because I think now that is seen by some people as a barrier is that they don't have e-punch equipment. So did you all have e-punch from the get-go, and how much personal investment, or where did you get the money for your e-punch equipment? We can start back with Boris.
So again, I have sort of a spoiled, privileged answer in addition to another answer. Again, I was fortunate enough to have good connections in the Orienteering USA community. We moved here from DC, where we were very active members of the Quantico Orienteering Club. And Quantico donated to us their set of old equipment. So they donated, I think, about 50 finger sticks that were, they're all SI 5s and 6s, but whatever, it's still. And then they donated about, I think, 15 boxes. And the rest, the initial investment came from, we got some donations to the club from people who thought that was a really cool idea. We donated a substantial amount of money to the club, and then a few of the folks who got excited about it early on also made some donations. So that was the initial capital. I think I would say about $5,000 was sort of the initial investment, all in all, on between sport and equipment and kind of other peripherals that you want, like a bag of loaner compasses, map cases, just junk like that you don't really think about until you start having to buy it.
Yeah, so that's a fairly significant sum, $5,000.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's. I guess you can probably start with less, but if you want all the things that all the trappings of a club, that's Radu, e-punch.
Yeah. Yes, we did not have e-punch from the beginning. The first few years, I don't know, maybe even close to 10 years, it was all manual punch. And we had enough revenue to buy e-punch. The problem was we used pretty much all of it to pay for maps, kind of going to the mapping part, right? So we said, okay, what's more important for us, to have events or just have one map and have e-punch and one event a year? And we decided to kind of move towards, okay, let's purchase some, but little by little, right? So once we had a good amount of maps, like 6-7 maps, then we started investing in e-punch. And the way we did it, we didn't have enough money to have all courses on e-punch. So we said, you know what? We know the advanced courses, those will probably benefit or would like the e-punch the most. So first, we started with the red or green courses. We will provide e-punch. So we bought enough boxes and sticks to rent. That's another issue here in Texas. Nobody has their own stick, right? So we have to rent them all out. So we had to have enough to rent for those red runners. So we looked at our past events, how many events we have, how many people we have on these courses, and we estimated, right? And as we moved along every year, we just purchased a few more, until right now we have pretty much a full kit that we can support up to like 300 people rentals if we need to. As far as controls, we don't have that many there boxes, but we have enough. We have about 50 boxes, plus all the other, the starts, the finishes, and all that. But that's sufficient for us to have all of our courses. So that's kind of how we started.
All right, and Bruce?
Yeah, we didn't really have any meets until we got some sporting equipment. Jason was kind enough to lend some money to get the first 20. And that's kind of hard to do a lot of courses with that. But then as we started getting more people or meets, we'd be able to buy 13 more. So I think we have 33 now. And Jason's paid off. So we're doing fine. But yeah, we didn't really have any meets until we had some e-punches and finger sticks and everything else we needed. And we need more than 33 because we just got one stolen last weekend. So you know how that happens. It just, you always have to get something. And we have 2 that went dead because of all the rain out of here in this area. So we've got now down to 30.
I always figure about attrition about one per year.
Yes, probably about right, yeah.
We do. Just either, someone takes one or
broken
or
or something.
we had a control retriever drop one and lose it somewhere. Like it happens. Yeah, so I heard, okay, someone asked about like how much investment. I heard 5,000 from Boris. I don't know. It sounds like Bruce, you had a little bit of a personal loan that got paid off.
Yeah, I think he paid $5,000 for the first 20 or 25. I can't remember how much he got. I think it was that much probably. It's just bought through Sportnet US out in California.
Right, that's the U.S. Distributor.
Yeah, Sophie, and then we bought some more since then. So it is a sizable investment. But since the club wasn't paying anything for mapping, that helped. And also getting back to the mapping, talking about the Orienteering USA grant, Nashville did get a grant, some grant money for mapping, then hired me to make one of the maps that we haven't used yet. So that does help when you don't have to pay for the mapping to save it for equipment, because that is expensive too.
Absolutely. Great. Well, we've had a few questions on the side here. Some of them addressed. We had a question about nonprofit status for the clubs. Are all three of these new clubs registered 501c3 organization?
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty standard. That's also there's some requirement with OUSA, right? You have to be some kind of.
We were 501c3. We acted like one, but officially it took us a few years to have the paperwork filed through IRS. Even that was a challenge. Everybody, we didn't have the expertise in our club or somebody willing to do all the paperwork and submit it. And we had another volunteer that ran across our club and submitted all the paperwork. He disappeared since, but he assisted with that effort, and we appreciate that very much.
I believe for OUSA insurance purposes, you need to be in the process of applying for 501c3 status.
Right. Yeah, or you don't. I don't know that you have to be 501c3. There's another code, right? It's a little less official. You don't have to incorporate. As long as you are operating as there's sort of it's almost like a gimme nonprofit status, not as official. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you have to be a nonprofit for the insurance. There was a question from Mary about courses, and actually that's pretty good, because I think it's a little intimidating for people to think, well, I gotta set 7 courses, right? I need all the equipment so that I can set white, yellow, orange, brown, green, red, blue. So I'm curious what courses you all offer and how that works for you. Boris answered in the chat, but you can answer for everybody.
Sure, yeah. Right away, I didn't want to start with the color-coded courses. I wanted to have it be as jargon-free as orienteering can possibly be. So we call them beginner, advanced beginner, intermediate, and then advanced and long advanced. It's sort of up to the course setter if they want to offer a long advanced. So we kind of minimal of 4 courses, typically 5. Sometimes I'll do 6 if I know someone who's coming who is going to try to do a longer course than they should. Yeah, typically 4 or 5 courses. And then in terms of volunteer load for the event, there's usually an event director, which is someone who knows how to run the laptop. So we've trained a few people to do that. A course setter, and then the beginner instructor. So that's kind of the bare bones staff. We find that we can run most events with that. If we know that, like if it's a beginner focused event and we know that more people are coming, I'll recruit more beginner instructors. But typically 3 is who is the number that we can get away with.
Yeah, in Austin, the very first event we had all the course tickets except blue, because we wanted to make it as official as possible. But then, although we had like 150 participants or something like that, at the end we realized that there was not enough people in each course, in each class, right, to make it meaningful, to be able to compare results. So we went down, and to what Boris was saying, nobody knew what yellow, white, any of that meant. So we said, okay, until we get more people into this, we're going to set up 3 courses. And we called them beginner, intermediate, and advanced. The beginner course was kind of a white-yellow. Intermediate was an orange. And then the advanced course, more like a green-red course. And that's how we operated for many, many years. And even now, we have events that we don't have all the courses. Basically, if we have a green course, we will not have a red course, and maybe because the area is too small to fit two in there, to fit both green and red. Sometimes we have a red, but not a green. But if we put a red, then we consider also adding a brown for the ones that wants to run a shorter distance. And we kind of change that, but I would say what stays consistent is white, yellow, orange. Those we always have those courses at all events, and then for the advanced courses, we will add a combination of brown, green, red, and even blue sometimes.
All right. Wait. So do you call them? You're using the color still? The color names? I don't know if I missed that.
You asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now we're using the color courses.
You are using the color name for it. Okay.
Not all of them for all the events.
Right. But when
you're expecting a big participation, like Bora was saying, if we know there's a bigger event where there's more schools coming, we might have more courses, or even split multiple like yellow courses or orange courses, because there's so many. We'll have like 100 some participants on one course and one class. That makes it difficult to, for results wise.
Yeah. And Bruce, what does NashO do?
A lot of our parks are kind of small, so we've been doing 3 courses. We've been fine with that. On some of the bigger courses, we just had a meet at Cedars 11, and it was a long O. So I would design a blue course. It was 11K. It was like a long O, 11K, and then I have a red within it and a green within it, so that you have a dashed line. At one map, you get dashed line to cut from, say, 10 to 15 for the red, and then a dash line from 8 to 18 or whatever for the green, to make it 3 courses in one map, basically. And that helps just by extending the course a bit, since they're all advanced, and you don't have to use too many. So we are a little tight on the controls. We have to be a little creative with it sometimes, but it's worked so far.
Okay. We talked a little about where you get volunteers from, and this probably overlaps, but I'm interested in where you're getting participants from, and whether you have schools or JROTC units, and how that came to be. We can start with Boris again.
Sure. This goes back a little bit to our origin story, because again, there was no concept of orienteering in Missoula, and so we had no idea how to get people. So the first thing I did was I reached out to a bunch of outdoor organizations in town, running clubs, skiing clubs, hiking clubs, mountaineering clubs, whatever. And the most promising response that I got was from the Nordic skiers and from the mountaineers. And so like the very first people we got were from those mailing lists, because those clubs were willing to send information onto their members. And in many ways that's persisted. Like we've advertised fairly heavily to Nordic skiers, and we have a good relationship with a Nordic skiing club in town. We put on orienteering events for their ski program, and they send us kids for our orienteering program. Other than that, I think we've gotten to the point where it's a lot of word of mouth. My goal is to get to the point where like every single person in Missoula knows what Grizzly Orienteering is. We're not there yet, but I think it's starting to happen. Starting to happen more, and we advertise all of our events on the city's event boards and things like that. In terms of schools and youth program, that's kind of a separate conversation, but youth has been a huge goal for us right from the very beginning. I thought for a long time when trying to start the youth program whether I would go the schools approach or the club approach. I decided to go the club approach because it seemed easier at the time. And so we have basically run our youth program as an extension of GrizO, as opposed to a coordination with schools. And so we advertise to our members, we advertise to anyone who's participated in our events, and we also put up flyers in all the schools around Missoula, in coffee shops, climbing gyms, whatever we can to get kids for our youth program. The last thing I say, and I know I'm talking a lot, my sort of end goal with this is to emulate what Cascade does with their incredible interscholastic league. And so as a first step to that, at the end of the spring, we're hosting what we're calling like an all schools orienteering festival. So we're sort of methodically reaching out to gym teachers and social studies teachers at every school in Missoula to kind of tell them what we're offering, which is like a day of fun, games, orienteering, and hope that, you know, maybe some of them are going to show up. And then just since I'm already talking, to answer Gord, yes, we do have a meetup group. I am not, at first I was confident that it was bringing us people. I'm no longer confident that it's worth the money, but we do have a meetup group.
All right, Bruce, where do your actual participants come from?
The participants, we got a variety of people: families, kids, ROTC, scouts. It's a big city, so you just never know. Some weeks we have a lot of people, up to 70 or 80, and some weeks we only have 20. Like last week, it's kind of hard to tell. As far as the volunteers, they're pretty much all the core members that we have, and we have 9 or 10 of those. So it's really good that we have enough volunteers, but we always need more to do that. We have a guy in the club who came from Florida Orienteering Club. His name is Brent Ward. He does a great job with marketing, and I don't like doing that very much, so it's great to have him, calling people, emailing the groups, Facebook groups, scouts, whatever group it is, he's after them to try to get to go to the meet. So that helps a lot to have somebody that really likes to do that and is good at it.
And so is that your primary way of getting the word out, advertising? I mean, obviously you have a club website people can find.
We have a club website. We have a Facebook page, and all that. Yeah, I'm not sure which method is the best. It's just kind of all together. You just have to sort of reach out to as many people as possible, different ways nowadays. You just can't rely on one thing and hope that it sticks. So I think the method he's using is really good, just reaching out to groups, and that helps. And the other people learn from just social media or we have an Instagram account, Facebook, and our website. So,
and Roddy, where do your participants? I think you mentioned.
There's a combination here, but I would say the majority of our participation comes from the JRTC groups. We, like, for the past 2 years or so, we have events that we have like 20 schools that attend. They don't imagine they bring the whole school, but they bring a good amount of people to make a great event. And the reason they started bringing a lot of people, I guess these schools have other programs in their schools, like an orienteering program, and they have to have like an yearly orienteering event. And previously they were trying internally to set up an orienteering event without equipment, without knowledge about orienteering. And a lot of schools reached out to us for that. Hey, can you assist with putting an event for us? And not to turn them down, but each time we said, you know what, let's line up our schedules, right? And you guys come to our event. We can do your school's event with our event. And if you want to do, special awards for your schools only that you're bringing, you can do that. And all of those schools decided to take that route. It's easier for them, easier to manage. They don't have to really do anything. Just bring all the schools together. But yeah, that's the majority of the participation for our events. And then, of course, we have families. Then maybe one member of the family has done orienteering in the past, and now it's bringing everybody, the whole family, to Orienteer. And there's always some individuals, but not a whole lot. It's more like families and ROTC groups that bring the majority.
So how many, when you said sometimes up to 20 schools with JRTC programs, how many participants do you have at that event with that?
Like 250, close to 300 sometimes.
So the size of a national meet, some national meets.
Yes, and it's that's when volunteering, it's a challenge. But someone said earlier, right? So if we know we have an event, a big event like that, because we coordinate with those schools ahead of time, right? To kind of line up the schedules where they know ahead of time, okay, each school is going to bring 8 or 10 or something like that, 15. And knowing that, on average, we have about 100, 150, we kind of estimate how many people we need. And that's when right now we establish relationships with a lot of folks, right? We have members that have been assisting us a whole lot. And when we know we have an event like that, we put it out there. Okay, we need help. We need help with start, finish, registration, and picking up controls. We always put that out there, but there's always help for that. And we're fortunate that that's happening, because we always tell everybody that if you want to learn orienteering, the best way to do it is picking up controls. So that works for us great.
Do you have like a host school who provides volunteers at each of these events, or
no?
No.
Schools sometimes the coaches, I guess, or the instructors for the schools help at the start area to kind of keep everybody in line. When you have 300 people all crowded there, it could be loud. They don't hear their start times. It could get really crazy. And they're good to kind of assist at the start, to call out names. If the individual calling out names, he's going to stay behind and call the name again, or it's going to call the time, reminders like that, or help them help even those that never done orienteering, to make sure they pick up the right map, make sure you clear and check, those type of things. So that helps a lot.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty big event to handle a lot of kids. Just want to point out, Boris wrote in the chat here that they host summer camps in conjunction with Missoula Parks and Rec, which seems to have the highest conversion rate from exposure to regular attendance. Seems like a good tidbit. Yeah, cool. We have just about 10 minutes of scheduled time left, and we've had questions in the messages there. But if anyone hasn't written a question or would like to just ask a question, use the little raise hand button, and we can take some questions verbally. Okay. Go ahead. It's Ryan, right?
I'll be brave here. Boris touched on it, but I'd like to hear other people's ideas on how to convert attendees into volunteers.
I can jump in if none of the panelists want to start on. I've had I think this goes for almost anything, but asking somebody personally, I think, is the best way. And that goes for almost anything. But you see somebody who's enthusiastic about orienteering, and I think just asking them before an event, with a text or an email or something, asking them to do a specific job, and that to me has helped, because people don't realize that they can. We also we require pre-registration for our events, and we have would you like to volunteer? And a lot of people say yes when we do that. So then we can reach out and assign them to something in advance. But yeah, if the panelists have something to add to that.
Sure. I think what Christina says is right on. First of all, like, individually asking people definitely works better than a general call for volunteers. For bigger tasks like course setting, what I've found is people are intimidated to take it on. But because we have this year-round Tuesday night training thing, it is much easier for me to ask someone to put on one of those, because it's completely informal, doesn't have to require, doesn't have to have e-punch or anything. And I found that's a good stepping stone for folks to, like, okay, well, if I can set this training thing, probably I can do an event. And with the event directing piece, we ask people to shadow us, and that helps a lot. So we have new event directors who start by shadowing someone kind of leading up to the event, and then on the day of, and then they try it out when it's their turn to direct, and we do the opposite. We kind of hold their hands for the first time, so that helps a lot. It kind of reduces the barrier.
Joseph.
Yeah, I was wondering if any of you guys use course consultants. Like when someone's designing courses and they've only been doing it, maybe 5 or 6 courses, or their early courses, do they send their courses to someone who's experienced to look over and make suggestions? And what course setting software do you use?
I can take that. So software-wise, we use PurplePen or OCAT, but PurplePen for the most part. And also that helps with those volunteers that don't have access to OCAT to set up a course, and it's easy enough to figure it out. Consultants, we have like a few folks in our club that pretty much design the courses all the time, and we consult with each other on some of the courses, not all of them, in case they want to run as well. But that's kind of how we do it. We do consult with each other. We don't have enough volunteers for course setting. Like Boris was saying, they're intimidated because they want to do it, but they just don't know if they're gonna do a good job. And we take that when we have those individuals because we want to train them. So with training, maybe later they could take over an event.
Yeah, for the course consulting question part of it, I almost always pair up new course setters. In fact, I've asked Boris to do course consulting, and I don't know, maybe other people on this call, but it doesn't have to be super formal. Just having somebody send their courses to an experienced orienteer and spending an hour looking at it can make a big difference in the quality and the confidence of your course setters. Mary in the chat has pointed out that they have a course setting mentorship program. Maybe we do something similar. New course setters paired up with an experienced one. So I don't know the exact sequence, but you can have, the first one, they just watch everything the course setter does, and then they give it a shot, and they're having somebody help them. And then, eventually they earn their wings. And let's see. Dahlia, go ahead.
This is a less logistical question, but I was wondering what's your proudest thing that you've accomplished with your new clubs?
I want to hear from all three on this one. So we'll start with Boris.
I think I've got two things. One is organizational, and the other one is competitive. Organizational is pulling off a 4-day NRE orienteering festival this past summer. I mean, it was just so cool. It was so much work, and the whole club came together, and watching people from all over the country and from Canada come and enjoy, the best terrain, the best courses that we have to offer. It was such an awesome feeling. It's like, I can't believe this happened. And then competitively, having our college kids win the intercollegiates and defeat West Point and defeat Arizona and a few other top schools last year was pretty darn cool. It was really fun to watch them do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
This one, it's hard for me. I would say that I feel proud myself and maybe others within the club after each event, right? So because there's so much preparation for each event, even if it's a small one, there's registration, payments, getting the venue secured and all of that. And then at the end, you always have that relief moment. Okay, it's done. It was great. You hear good feedback from everybody. And then you do it again and again. So I think with each event, you have that proud moment. And also, I would say, just to add to that, lately, right, since we kind of learned, or a few individuals in our club learned how to do mapping, now we don't depend so much on hiring a mapper to do the maps for us. So we tag team, we divide split areas, park into multiple areas, and we do our own mapping, our own field checking by volunteers without spending a penny. I think that's something to be proud of, that we can do it internally.
Well, for Nashville, I think the best thing that I got going on, what I'm most proud of, is that my goal was to start a club, and it has been started, and I'm not needed anymore. So it's all on its own. So it's like birthing a club, and you're done. I can just leave. Won't have to go back. It'll be strong.
That's awesome, Bruce. That's the dream.
Yeah, indeed. If we could just have all these people starting clubs, just move to new cities and launch them, and then leave and start a new club somewhere else.
I thought it would take a year, but it took 2. So
Well, that's still pretty good.
it's not. Well, of course, I was doing it from another city too, which
Yeah.
doesn't help.
If anyone here has friends in Flagstaff, I will help them start a club. It needs to happen. Boris is encouraging everybody to host or NREs and says it's fun and we'll come to them.
We just need to meet director. We'll do it. Nobody raises their hand for that.
To plug, the OUSA has a fee waiver 1-day NRE option. You don't have to, the idea is you convert a local event into a national ranking event. OUSA will provide a course consultant, and if you want a little bit of event help consulting, the idea is, yes, you have to offer 7 courses, but you don't have to have set start times. You don't need to do all the fancy stuff. It's 1 day. You don't owe any extra money to OUSA. It's just no extra fees, and national ranking points for all your local members. So I am encouraging all clubs to do this, even though it's been a few years since my club has done it. Yeah. All right. We're at 6:30. At this point, I'd like people to be able to get dinner or go to bed or whatever. If there are any remaining questions, though, I don't know if the panelists can stick around for a little bit and we can have a little more free for all talking. I think we'll stop the recording here, though. So many thanks to our 3 panelists, Boris, Radu, and Bruce, and everybody who's questions in the side and verbally. So yeah, stick around if you want to if you need to drill these guys with any more questions that you didn't want to do for the whole group.
Thank you, Christina.
We'll see if there's anybody. There's a lot of questions to get to.
Thanks to all of you. I'm kind of curious, Boris. It sounds like you've had a lot of success engaging with other institutions in Missoula. Do you think that's partly just, well, I mean, I'm sure you've worked hard at it, but is it partly a matter of the scale fitting for one club in a fairly small city, relatively speaking? Like, I'm sure if we went to DC Parks and Rec, I don't know where we would do a summer program for them, but they'd consider us too small to notice.
I think it definitely helps. For folks who are not familiar, Missoula is a city of about 80,000 that's nestled in the mountains in western Montana. It's got a very outdoor culture by nature, and so when you tell people about orienteering, even if they don't end up doing it, it automatically sounds cool. So I do think that the size and the attitude of the city helps a lot. And we have done a ton of outreach. We've tried to talk to kind of all of these organizations, and people, I think, always want more summer camp programming. So no one has really said no in that respect. So I do think size of the city and its kind of outdoor orientation help a lot.
Go ahead, Fred.
So I'd like to kind of offer the other end of the spectrum on that. I moved to the southern end of the Shenandoah Valley about 5 years ago from DVOA land, where I was quite active. And like many people on this call, really miss doing orienteering. There are no clubs around here. Probably the closest one is Northern Virginia, Quantico. And I've been trying various ways to get people involved and interested in orienteering. I've worked with schools, the local rec people, other clubs, so forth. But I get the feeling, and I dialed into this call thinking maybe something would change my mind, and I don't think it has. But I'm about ready to give up. It seems to me that there has to be kind of almost a minimum size of a city to enable the fraction of people that would be interested in orienteering to form a critical mass necessary to form a club. Missoula sounds small, but it's 10 times the size of the town I'm in. And in 7,000 people, you really have to have a high conversion rate to have enough people to hold a meet, it seems like. So there's probably a minimum size that you need for the critical mass. And then, on the flip side, doing this in a huge area, if they don't already have a club, I could see would run into a lot of headwinds too. There's just the cultural part of it too. Boris mentioned, very outdoor oriented. I think, where I live is very outdoor oriented. We're kind of right between the Alleghenies and the Blue Ridge, and there's a lot of people that do things outdoors, but they're not orienteering. They're hunters, they're hikers, and so forth. And orienteering is so foreign to them that, the one or two people that you might entice to do hiking off a trail just simply aren't enough. So I just wanted to offer that. Like I said, I called in hoping maybe someone would convince me that I'm wrong, but I don't think that's true. I just don't think it's possible to create a club in such a small, rural, less dense area. But I'm willing to be someone to give me a counter argument.
Fred, what's your closest city?
Well, if you wanted to call it a city, it would be Roanoke, and that's about 45 minutes away. Charlottesville might be an option. That's about an hour and a half. And then Richmond is about 2 hours, and they do have a club. And then DC's maybe 2.5, 3 hours
Sounds like
drive.
Roanoke.
Just to say, Blacksburg has a club, although it's not OUSA affiliated.
And it's very, very small. I actually did go to one of their meets once. Yeah, it's a very, it's basically Virginia Tech people. It's in Blacksburg. And probably because they get university students, they're not around for a very long time. And so they're not really a good base for, the long-term validity of a club, I think. Anyway, I just wanted to point out that, being big, too big might be a problem, and being too small is also a problem.
I just wanted to add, well, not to add, it's more like a question. I feel like here in Texas, Austin, I feel like we're so remote from a lot of nice events, national events that are happening in the United States. And I wish, and I planned myself to start going, to travel more, to be able to attend on some of the other events that these clubs are hosting across the United States. But I just wanted to ask, how do you manage some of the panelists, I guess, or the other people on the call? How do you manage to kind of go all over, to the events that are held throughout the United States? And if we can do something to bring more of that, the closest I've been recently was the nationals, junior nationals in Dallas, and I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed it a lot seeing, just looking at the jerseys, right, at different clubs. I recognize GrizO, Boris. I remember they did excellent on all the courses. They're really good, and I wanted to see a lot of that, in Texas too. And you don't see that a whole lot, right? We see it when we have a national event like the one in Dallas, but other than that, we don't. I don't think you guys travel down here, and also the individuals from here don't travel up.
I can answer that a little bit, Radu. Because I come from a competitive orienteering background, that has always been one of the things on my mind when trying to grow the club and grow the youth program in particular. And so I immediately said that one of the goals of our youth program will be to send as many kids as we can to junior nationals so that they get exposed to other things. We can't go and drive to a club nearby. The nearest club to us that organizes more than 2 or 3 events a year is probably 8 hours away. So we sort of have to make a big trip. But so instead of trying to take several smaller trips, I basically try to make it a big, exciting trip that is the highlight of the year for them. and the club, we can't like pay all their expenses, but this year I think we gave $300 to each of the kids' families who was traveling, and we really made this like, let's go. And we also play up the team aspect. We say like, listen, if you come, we're gonna have a high school team that we can enter, and it's still hard, right? I'm not gonna say this is a complete success. There were a bunch of kids who, for whatever reasons, couldn't come, but I do try to make it this like highlight of the year for them, this exciting thing that they're gonna go to together, run as a team. I think that helps because you're absolutely right. Seeing what other clubs are doing, seeing bigger events can be inspirational and can make it seem like, hey, this is a real activity that other people do, and not just like us 20 weirdos in Missoula.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a great idea, and I think we can start doing that as well, because I think there are a few kids out here that have a lot of potential. They're very good, and I think when there is an big event like that comes up, and we advertise it and say, hey, if you're willing to go, we're paying this much, or we're able to assist with some of the expenses, I think we may have some buy-in on that. Thank you for that, Boris.
Matthew.
I just had some comments. Earlier, Bruce called me a co-mapper, and I don't really consider myself a mapper. I've made maps that people have orienteered on, but my specialty is like doing LiDAR-based maps for other people to make maps with. And I would tell people, you don't have to learn LiDAR to get a LiDAR-based map. You just need to ask the right person for one. And I've done that so many times for Bruce and for Olu and Nashville and other places that I'm happy to do it, especially for places like that don't have an orienteering club. That's to me the best thing I can possibly be doing with my time. And the other comment I had was, for me, the biggest thing about orienteering, the biggest reward is that people show up to the events. And if people didn't show up, I don't think I could do it. In like 2007, sprints were becoming a thing. And I set an event. I spent like all this time to set like 3 sprint courses, and 11 people showed up, and like it almost killed me. So now, like, I can't remember the last time we didn't have people waiting at the finish or at the end of the event to help pick up controls at Orienteering Cincinnati stuff. So we've come a really long way, and not having to pull controls out of the woods is like the best thing in the world. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
I think I heard another for call for a question. Was there another one? Was that just the comment thing? Yeah, there are comments in the chat here about a person mispunching on a rec course. We actually offer generally at all our events an Explorer course, which is basically an all controls map. Sometimes if we're only offering intermediate and advanced stuff, we'll throw a couple beginner controls out there and then offer this score course, 1 point per control on the all controls map. And that way people who, we have people who prefer that format, and we have people who they want to do advanced orienteering, but they don't move very fast, so they can't finish the whole course. Whatever, they do this Explorer course. And then also if we have someone who goes out in the advanced course and they only find half the controls, or even if they just miss one, we can move them over then to Explorer, and they get that many points. I know that is it one of the clubs I think it was one of the clubs presenting about simple ePunch software last month, had created a custom MEOS results table that does that for you. Basically just has a friendly results view, I think is how they call it. I don't know if there's anyone here from that club. Yeah, so what Andrea said, or turn every mispunch into a score result, basically. It's a new friendly format. Okay. No more hands. No more questions. Great. Well, it's getting late on the East Coast, so I think this is a good time to wrap up. Thanks again, everybody, for being here.